Hi there, I'm Chris Kokkinos of Pro Sound Effects, and in this video I'm going to give you an inside look at how I design the sounds for the creatures of Grimm in Rooster Teeth's Ruby. Let's take a look at the clip we're going to redesign today. So typically what I like to do when I first start with a new creature is I like to make a list. Kind of like this. And in that list, I will typically try to write out a few different things that the creature really reminds me of. Maybe it's a human-like creature. Maybe it has a bark or a howl or something along those lines. Maybe it's a combination of those things and is some kind of alien creature or some sort. And then from there, what I'll do is I will take it and I will put that into kind of a mind map space where I can then write out some of the ideas of what sounds I think might work best with that. All right, so now that I have my notes and I mind mapped everything, I have some ideas of what terms I want to look for while looking through my library. So let's go ahead and just start looking for some things. The first thing I noted is human-like. I typically like to use human sounds in a lot of my creatures because we just have so many different things we can do with our voices, and I think that if it's something that I can't do with my own voice, I like to go to a library to kind of get something that's a little bit out of my range, high, low, maybe it's a sound I can't make. Let's kind of just search for some things and see what we can find. I kind of wanted to look for some death screams. I think death screams are typically, well, they're blood-curdling, they're horrifying, and they're usually really great base points for roars and shrieks that a monster or creature might make. Let's see what happens if we put you down. That's pretty cool. It might work. It might need some treatment, but I think that it's a really cool base point. We can import it and kind of keep going from there. So while I did write dogs and wolves and barks and howls, I do think that some of those could work, but I was thinking about it and I feel like maybe even looking for bigger creatures, something like a tiger or a lion could work even better for this. So I thought, let's go that route and see if we can maybe come up with something that would fit the bill and still feel hound-like. Okay, this is great. I really like those inhales because you can kind of feel like the esophagus, you can hear it, it just kind of feels a little bit unsettling. And then that growl is just perfect. I think both those elements will work in some way, shape, or form. So I'll go ahead and import that and we'll keep moving on. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward through the next little bit because I feel like we're kind of on our way and I have a really good idea of a lot of the things I'm going to look for. Some of the terms I'm going to be searching are elephant, lion roar. I'm going to be looking for dolphins and other clicky elements. I think that there's some really cool sounds we might be able to find there. I'm going to look for, I made a mention of kind of like looking for some alien things. I'm going to see if that term kind of kicks back any sounds. And we'll reconvene after and see what it feels like on the timeline. All right, so here we are in Pro Tools now. As you can see, I've got my template loaded. I've got all the files at the head of the session. I'm gonna massage them around a little bit in placement, and then we'll go ahead and kind of activate some of the plugins. The plugins there are just a pitch tool and a saturator tool. I typically like to have those on all of my tracks. I like to automate the pitch tool to kind of give the sound a little bit more movement to try and match what's happening on screen. And then I like to use the saturation tool to just give sounds a little bit more bite, make them feel a little bit more aggressive. So I feel like that's going to come into play for the big roar that's about to happen. Okay, so I'm going to move some things around, but I'm going to skip ahead so we can see where I land and kind of listen to the sounds together and then massage them even more and see what's working. All right, so as you can see here, what I did was I pulled back all the sounds and I just grabbed a handful of the sounds that I thought could work for the initial time we see the hound emerge from the rubble, from the dust. We can listen to each of those sounds and I'll kind of talk about why I chose those particular sounds. I really liked that sound originally because it had a nice growl to it. It had that inhale breath, but I kind of felt like it worked a little bit better in reverse there. Personal preference. I really liked that elephant air blast because I felt like it just gave us a little bit more of the presence of the hound as it kind of emerges. It's like, I'm here, like. So I gave it that wet sound there because I feel like it needs to have it. I feel like any of the vocalizations this thing makes it's just going to be gross and very wet sounding. Now I don't know if this sound is going to make it to final, but we'll try it out and see what happens. So I went ahead and I added this clicking sound, this dolphin clicking, because we never really truly see the hound's eyes open. And so part of me wants to kind of sell this idea that it almost hears and smells better than it sees, and the clicking almost gives you the semblance of echolocation in a way. For this moment here, I wanted to add this extra growl. It was a little bit deeper, more guttural sounding than the tiger growl, and I think that it is going to give us that mid to low mid frequency, that range that I really want to add a little bit of extra oomph to. And then we have this really beautiful stereo, real deep, really spooky sounding kind of growl that almost has like a tremolated effect kind of built in. I think it blends well with the lion growl, and I think that all of these are going to kind of glue together well. So I'm going to tidy these up a little bit more. I'm going to add some EQ, and I'm going to go ahead and start using my pitch and my saturation tool, and then we'll listen to it again. As you can see, there's a little bit more fade action happening. You can see that there's some EQing happening here. I went ahead and did a little bit of subtractive and additive EQ on the clip itself. The beginning part here, I wanted to keep that low end rumble. The back end, I wanted to get rid of it so that we're just focusing on kind of the higher part of the breath. The clicking, I just wanted to focus on that, so I got rid of all the low end. There's some low end in here I didn't want because I really wanted just that wetness from this sound. Again, the hiss, more low end. The idea I think here was that I wasn't trying to add too much low end to this first half because I really want that next sound to pop. I want it to just really punch through. So this is what it all sounds like together right now. So let's go ahead and start assembling the second part now. Alright, so I went ahead and I pulled everything for the second area together, and I reused some sounds from the beginning. This asthmatic tiger, I really like that sound a lot. There's something about it that just really works well for me in kind of the grand scheme of things. I went ahead and made all of my plugins inactive again so we could just hear it as it is out of the library. I think it's perfect. I don't think I have to do a whole lot to that. I might pitch it down some, but there's just something about that I think that's going to work really, really well for this. Now, it doesn't sound like much, but there's something about that initial crackly sound that I think is going to give extra bite, especially when I saturate that a little bit to the actual impact of the sound, like right at the beginning of the sound. The second piece I'm not really sure about yet. It's not really doing much for me, but we can always take it out after if we don't like it. For me, I just like how this leads up. I think that one thing that you should pay attention to when you're designing is kind of having not only layers up and down vertically, but horizontally as well. I kind of like to design like it would be almost like an envelope, where it's got its attack, its decay, sustain, and release. Like there's just something happening in each piece to kind of like tell the full story. So that sound there, I feel like is going to be the main base of the sound as a whole. I think it's going to just rip through, especially when I saturate it and add some like spice to it. So that sound there just has its own saturation to it, and I love that. I think that it's going to really just, it's going to make this thing feel so aggressive. And last but not least, my shrieky elements. I love having just really high, shrill sounds in some of these creatures because it makes it feel that much more unsettling. So I think all of these pieces blending together, I think it's going to glue together so well. We've hit high, mid, and low frequencies, and I think it's just going to really punch through. All right, so there's a little bit of EQing and one reverse happening, but otherwise there's not a whole lot else happening here. So let's go ahead and take a listen to it now before I go through my processing pass. So I think that sounds pretty cool so far. But let's see what happens when I add pitch, compression, saturation, and a little bit of reverb. I tried to quickly go through this in about 15-20 minutes to come up with some neat ways to process this so it sounds a little bit more fierce and a little bit scarier. This is where I ended up. I'm digging the direction we're going. I feel like there's a lot more I can do. But for the sake of the tutorial today, I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of kind of how the process works for me. It's super iterative. Like, don't be afraid to add sounds and then get rid of them. It's not really a matter of if you're going to add and remove sounds, it's just a matter of when. It's not every sound works, and sometimes it just makes noise. As for processing, there are some tools in here that I use that I'm happy with, and some that I might also get rid of. I might find alternatives to it, or, just get rid of it altogether. So be kind to yourself as you're going through this process, because creatures are kind of hard to design. But once you get it right, it feels so perfect. Thank you so much for joining me on today's ride. I had so much fun redesigning the Hound. Like, that was a passion of mine to work on during production, and it was so neat to kind of revisit and come up with new ways to design the vocalization for it. So if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more notifications. Pro Sound Effects already has some really great tutorials you definitely need to check out, and there's no telling what's on the horizon. And if you have any thoughts on this video, let us know down in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know if this video was informative to you, and what kind of sound design tutorials you'd like to see in the future. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. Now go create some cool creature sounds, and we'll see you next time. Take care.